Welcome to Thriving Rockstar with Alex Draken. Today's guest is Angela McCuiston, and she's a fitness professional for musicians. How are you, Angela?
I'm good. How are you, Alex?
I'm well. I'm well. So what does that mean? Like what do you do for musicians exactly?
I do an awful lot, actually. So it's not just it's kind of a multifaceted thing. I take an awful lot of all my different physical backgrounds. So I have 2 degrees in music, so
Hmm.
I know where that the musicians come from. I'm a musician myself, but I take fitness training from the realm of a personal trainer. So I use personal strength training and corrective exercise to find muscle imbalances and to prevent and overcome overuse injuries using
Hmm.
strength training. So not just we do a whole lot of stuff, whether it's increasing body awareness or doing self myofascial release, neurokinetic therapy. I use a lot of modalities, but it all comes back to tying it together through strength training.
Mm. Yeah, I really took a liking to what you do, and just I noticed from your Instagram, just a lot of very practical physical approaches. It's and you have like a survey going, right? Trying to well, explain that to us.
Yeah, I do. I wrote my first book this last year.
Awesome.
It's getting republished. I wanted to update it, so that's coming out here pretty quickly, and it's called the Musician's Essential Exercises. Or uh, actually, I keep going back and forth. Like, what is my title? Is it that or the Essential Exercises for Musicians? I can never remember my own title, but the basics. It's the basics of what musicians need to know. So it
Right.
covers everybody. The
Mm.
survey that I have out right now, I'm trying to get as much information as I can from every kind of musician possible, whether you're an audio tech or a tuba player or a conductor or a vocalist or a guitarist or whatever. I
Hmm.
need to know what it's just a quick anonymous 10 question survey, but I really want to know, where do you struggle physically? What have you ever had an injury? Did you ever have treatment for it? Did it work? Did it not work? That kind of stuff. So I can write. I'm currently working on books for every musician. So
Mm.
it's going to be instrument specific.
Hmm. That's
And I'm
yeah, it's pretty smart. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I seen like the post like, hey, are you guitar players, like what are you struggling with, and
yes,
oboists. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. I want to know from everybody because I'm a flute player and
Hmm.
I know our injuries. I've had a bunch of them, but I don't know what oboists struggle with. I mean, I haven't trained every single musician on the planet. I don't know, and y'all know your own people. You know your own story, but you know your community, and I want to draw off your wealth of knowledge. So
Yes.
I want you all to educate me so I can help you.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah,
And every instrumentalist has their own challenges from a physical standpoint because it's all chronic patterns. They find themselves like, in this particular position for too long, and they don't balance that with mobility or strength
yeah,
frequently enough. So like, yeah, what you're doing is important. Really, really
yeah.
cool.
Thank you. I tend to think so. Slightly biased.
Yeah. Well, I seek out people in the health space, health and music space, kind of combined here, and you fit that description very well here. I've had a yoga for musicians teacher here, and who's also a professional trombonist. So it's
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
yeah. Um, so you also have a military background.
I do. Yeah, actually I just got off the bus yesterday from playing with them at Mardi Gras. So I'm in
Wow.
the army band.
That's
I
awesome.
should, I should say I'm in an army band, not the army band.
Right,
There are
right.
a lot of them. I'm in a reserve band. I'm in the 313th Reserve Band based out of Redstone Arsenal in Alabama. And
Okay.
I was in the 129th Army Band, which is a National Guard band
Hmm.
in Nashville. And I was there for maybe 16 years. And this last year I transferred to the reserves. And it's been a very good career move. We do a lot of fun stuff, like play at
Mm.
Mardi Gras.
Yeah, that is very cool. Very
It's
fun.
fun. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I just got off the bus with them yesterday. We drove down, did the parade. Oh my gosh, I'm so sore from that parade.
Wow.
It had to be 5 hours of marching in this parade
Oh my God.
in those horrible shoes. Yeah.
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 Speaking of marching while playing, I seen a video of you
You did.
like doing lunges while playing the flute.
And dragging a sled.
Oh, yeah, and dragging a sled.
Yeah. I was doing some extra duty, and on my lunch break, I said, you know what? I got time to go train a client on my lunch break, so I went back to the gym, and so I'm still in uniform. And I said, one of my friends, Sarah Carter, she's in the Air Force. She's known as the lifting flutist.
Mm.
She's big into CrossFit, and she had posted a picture of her pulling this sled just stacked with plates like this, and
Wow.
she was playing a flute excerpt while walking backwards, and I went, challenge accepted. I want to try. So I asked my client, hey, will you video me? Let's just see how this goes. So I had her do two of them. I did the same excerpt she did, but I just walked forward, and we didn't have like straps. So I jerry rigged a TRX to like go over my shoulders. And I put like, I don't know, 180, 200 pounds on this sled and just walked. And I was like, I wonder what this is like if I play on it. And like, that's music strong right there.
Yeah, that's definitely music strong.
Yeah, I know. So then I did some lunges, like just to see if I could lunge while pulling this and doing and playing at the same time. And I will say, lunging in combat boots is not the same as lunging barefoot. It was not easy.
No, I mean, like, none of that sounds easy, but
It was fun though.
it does sound fun. It does sound fun. It's
It
like,
was hilarious.
it's like a
What
form
I
of
love
like
about
juggling. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I love about my gym is that all the trainers, they didn't even like really turn around and look. They're like, oh, it's Angela, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, like nothing abnormal here.
No, no.
It's
I
like
had a
regular every
client.
day.
Yeah, I mean, I have clients bring in their instruments all the time. And one of my clients is a fencer, and he
Mm,
got tendonitis. And I was like, hey, you know what? I took fencing in college. He goes, I have extra. I said, well, bring your stuff into the gym and we'll fence. And
wow.
so we did. They didn't
That's
think anything was
wow.
weird with that either.
Wow.
Good
Th-
times.
on that, do you think there's a carryover utility in doing this kind of like real, being in motion in that kind of way, while playing the instrument
You think there's carryover?
for performance?
I'm not quite sure. You mean like, is it is there a carryover from doing kind of like doing those simple kind of those silly kind of stunts, or like how marching band can carry over to performance?
Well, yeah, or I mean, marching band. I mean, marching is a thing, right? That's actually so. If you're doing lunges while playing, then that kind of prepares you for some marching in a way, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
playing while walking.
yeah. When you put it that way, yeah, it's not something I've really kind of thought about, but yeah, it's a skill
Hmm.
to be able to have this music memorized and do the breathing in the right spots to be able to phrase and
Mm.
to play musically while your fingers are doing all kinds of stuff, and then also being able to march in step at the same time. That's a high skill level.
Yeah.
It it really is. And then I mean, to have that carry over onto the stage where you're jumping around and I don't know if you're jumping off amps or if you're or if you're just on stage full of energy, you have to have that kind of stamina. So yeah, there's definitely some crossover.
So I just interviewed Rusty
Yeah,
Osborne, right? And he
he's
told,
great.
yeah, he is great. And I told him, he told me he every morning he does yoga while singing.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's like in his routine, and I'm like, so what's the benefit of that? And the carryover is like when he's on stage, he could be moving around doing all kinds of actual stage work while singing, and just maintaining just good breathing and just being connected to his body the whole time.
That makes perfect sense. There's I've been playing flute forever, and I don't like to sit still when I
Mm.
play. I don't like to sit when I play. I usually, when I'm practicing, I'm standing, and a lot of times I'm walking while playing.
Mm.
There's that movement and then the left part of your brain is controlled by the right side of your body. Or sorry, I said that backwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you have this cross, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're walking, you're getting both parts of your brain to interact while you're playing, and
Mm-hmm.
so that definitely has carryover as well. So I hadn't thought about it from the yoga singing standpoint, but it's kind of the same thing where you're walking and playing.
Yeah.
Same deal. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know
Brilliant.
the body is a big part of the mind.
Excuse me. It definitely is. Definitely
Yeah.
is.
And so, I think what you're doing is important in that, like, you're getting people to, or you're getting musicians to be aware of their body more so. And I think that gets them in just deeper engaged with their whole selves.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, do you know what body mapping is?
I think I do. Clarified here.
Right. So, your internal body map is your vision of how your body is,
Mm.
how you move, how it's constructed,
Hmm.
where things are. Like, for example, you know where your if you had to draw your hand, you
Hmm.
could probably draw all your knuckles and where all your fingers are. If I asked you where your spleen is, you're a little more vague.
Right.
Is right. Okay, so that's like your body map of where your spleen is a little, not quite right. My favorite my favorite example of this is I'll ask my students, where's the first joint of your arm?
Mm.
Where do you think it is?
The first joint,
Mm-hmm.
the fingers.
Opposite direction. Opposite direction.
Opposite direction.
Coming from the body.
Coming from the shoulder?
Nope,
No.
not quite. Farther back.
Further back. Oh, the scapula.
No, further back.
Whoa.
What? I won't leave you hanging.
Yeah.
It's your clavicle. Right where your
Oh,
clavicle meets your sternum. That
right.
joint is mobile. Your clavicles are mobile. So if you put your
Uh-huh.
hand right on that ball and you move your arm, you will feel it
Yeah, yeah,
move
yeah, yeah.
from here. Suddenly, your brain goes, "Oh, my arm moves from here. Motion originates here." So when you lift your arms to
Mm.
play or you lift your arms to do a whatever motion, now your
Mm-hmm.
brain is using yourself better than if it thought, well, it starts here. It's kind of
Right.
limited in your motion, right? So that's partly what body mapping is. And so I use that when I'm training people because people have no idea how their bodies move, no idea where their hips are, how to move their shoulders back. They're just clueless.
Mm.
We're sedentary people, and then when we get involved with our music making, we're just so involved in what we do, we forget we have bodies.
Yeah.
When was the last time you thought about the inside of your knees while you're playing?
Right.
Right? so so when you're training with me, it's not just, hey, I'm gonna teach you how to move. I want you to be so much more aware of yourself, because that will translate over into your practice and your performance.
Wow.
And it will also prevent injury way sooner because you're way more aware of, like, the space between your big toes and the spot underneath your earlobe, and where you're moving from. Yeah,
Mm.
it's all related. And then that goes back to having good form while you're training, because
Mm-hmm.
most people don't know what good form is. I
Right.
was injured because I had no clue what form is. I had
Mm.
a good idea about my body, but I wasn't sure how to use it.
Mm.
So, yeah. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. It clarifies things. And you know what? Like having that kind of body awareness, like you said, it's going to prevent injury. And I think it can also further expression, because if someone is unaware of their body, then they're not using it to its full potential, and they can't really sort of dig in, especially if someone plays something that's a little bit of a very physical instrument, let's say the drums or something like that. If they're very
Yeah.
connected to what they're doing, they could not only maybe have a wider dynamic range, say, because of the control of their body,
Yeah.
but they can also, well, look better while playing, and be less
Yeah.
constricted, but also, I mean,
Yeah.
from a longevity point of view, and this is part of like why I have these conversations, to extend the careers of musicians, and to make them feel better while they're, in their current state. But yeah, you would really be prolonging careers, because a lot of the injuries that can happen can really debilitate musicians and take them away from their craft. So yeah, it's an
It
important
does.
practice. But
It is. It is.
mhm, for sure, for sure. I feel like, especially as a rock musician, right? Um, it's important to put on a show, right? and we can get really caught up in our playing and just not really performing to our best, right? We can play all the notes, but if we're not putting on this show, you're not creating that energy between you and the
Right.
audience.
Right, right. And the more aware you are of yourself, the better you're going to be able to perform. And if
Hmm.
if something hurts, you're not going to move real well, you
Right.
know? Then you're
Exactly.
really aware of your body because you
Hmm.
don't want to do something to make it worse. But that's that's an injury loop, and that's nothing you want to get into.
No.
The
No.
bad.
No. No,
It's
for sure.
funny.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So.
and
Mhm.
that's I don't see that a whole lot in the classical realm. But I mean,
Mm.
we're all kind of very stiff and proper and wearing our tuxes and stuff. But there is a certain amount of energy that is still put forth. It's just not in the same way. And I think because in that seated realm, we feel like we're a little more constricted. And I feel like those are now this is me being completely. I have not done any studies on this, but I feel like that kind of setting, you're almost forced into a greater chance of injury because you're trying to emote, but you're constricted by being seated.
Sure.
And you can only move certain ways.
Mm.
Now, granted, when you can move around and bend your hips and squat and stand and all those kind of things, you also have a propensity for injury. You can twist your ankle, you can move wrong, whatever. But I
Mm.
mean, you're kind of put into a box, you know?
Sure.
And something that I've found, and it's I've been dealing with this a little myself, and so I started asking other people, have you ever dealt with sciatica and
Mm.
problems with your hips? And I had so many people go, oh my gosh, me, from all those long hours of sitting in rehearsal,
Hmm.
or whether you're in the studio or whatever, the more we sit, and then we sit in our cars and we sit in front of our computers and we sit to eat and we sit and we sit and we sit. And then you put that into rehearsals and we sit more and we don't think we're very aware of how we breathe and bracing and, control and support. But what about the rest of your lower body? I mean, from the hips down,
Yeah.
what's going on there? I mean, and if we don't stretch and move and strengthen that area, that translates dysfunction into the upper body, or it can stay in the lower body, and then you get sciatica, and you get low back pain, you get hip pain,
Oh
and you
yeah.
don't think it's related.
Oh
You
yeah.
can't, yeah,
When I teach guitar and I do address tension throughout the body and how that would manifest itself in and limit the actual motion that they could be doing. I've seen people like relax their legs and then increase in speed on the guitar. It's just
that's amazing.
yeah, yeah. It's really all connected. We're not like this collection of separate body parts or even body and mind. It's just all like one clump,
Yeah,
and
that's one of my.
mhm.
Yo, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. You really have to, you really have to take care of all that, and you have to be aware, fundamentally.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite things to say is that the body does not move. It doesn't work in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say you're doing a bicep curl, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're focusing on the bicep, but what else has to work? What in your shoulder has to stabilize the joint? What about your tricep, which is on the opposite side, doing the opposite motion? What
Mm.
about your grip? What about the muscles that are holding onto that dumbbell? What
Mm-hmm.
about your breathing? You're not just using your bicep. The body
Right.
doesn't work in isolation. You don't play your guitar with just your fingers.
No.
Violinists don't play with just the one shoulder.
Right.
We use our entire bodies to play. And I had a professor back in grad school who would say all the time, "Do you feel your feet when
Mm.
you're playing? Are you aware of your feet?" And so many times we're all wrapped up in our headspace when we play. We just get it so into it, which is fine. Except when you lose that connection with the rest of your body, you might not play as well.
Right.
And you're
Right.
suddenly like, I do feel my feet. Oh, I'm connected to the ground. Oh, my arches are flat. Oh, I'm doing that. I tend to shift one way or the other. And you're so much more aware, and you can bring such a better performance.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
made.
Oh yeah. One thing, exercise that I do with my students is I get them to play something simple and repeatable, right? And so now they're cycling this riff or lick or whatever, right? And then I get them to do a form of kind of like a meditation scan of their body.
While
So
they're playing.
while they're playing, so I get them to basically okay, so now all the attention's in the fingers, right? And now once they can get this pattern that just rolls, Now I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Let's shift attention, keep playing, shift attention to the hand, right? And feel and then when you put attention there and you feel there's any tension, you relax it. And then move it to the arm, then the elbow, then the upper arm, then the shoulders and the back and the neck and everything. And they scan their entire bodies while they're playing, and they can relax more. And then they can play from that place, and they can find any kind of troubling little tensions that they just automatically get into when playing certain things, especially at higher speeds or whatever the challenge may be. But like this is I call this the going deep, like deep practice kind of thing, and I basically sneak them into meditation at that point.
I love those backdoor policies. You just kind of backwards way to get in there, and then it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens when you slow down, you pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you meditate?
Huh?
Do you meditate?
I don't.
Okay.
Actually, I haven't ever gotten into that. But I've had lots of training on body awareness. And there's a what's funny that you should mention that, like move the attention here and then here and then here and then here. Mm-hmm. There's same professor from graduate school taught this class in dynamic integration, which is somewhat based on it's body awareness, but it's based on Feldenkrais. So you start at your feet, you lie on the floor, you notice all the spaces in between your body and the floor and what's touching the floor, and you just start to notice without judgment of any kind what, as you go up your body, and like the left side is one way, and then you compare it to the right side, and suddenly it's just doing that so long, you are so much more aware while you're playing, and it's kind of that same thing. Yeah, but not while you're playing. So I haven't tried that. I've done a little bit of, okay, so your fingers are really like this. Why don't you think about moving from the first joint of your fingers, which is down here, is where they connect to your wrist. Now, that's so much easier. Yeah, let's take the tension and move it somewhere else. And how does that feel? So,
I feel like
that's okay.
Taking tension from smaller places and moving it into larger muscles and joints, relieves a lot of stress.
It does. It does. Absolutely. Like do you teach sitting down?
Yeah, for the most part. But unless I do, like discuss if the student's at that point where it's like, okay, well, how do I perform live and put on a show? And then we stand up, put our straps on, and then we discuss, facets of that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the reason I ask is because you're thinking like when you bring tension out of the smaller areas and put it into the bigger areas, one of my favorite things to do with younger kids, high school and such, is they don't know that they have, like, do you feel the bones in your butt? You've got these two sit bones. Did you know that they were there? And then we go through, okay, so slouch this way and slouch this way. And do you feel them at all? Do you feel them evenly? And then I have an opportunity to tell them, okay, well, look, your spine is balanced on those two sit bones. And when they're balanced, your spine goes right up in the middle, and it let the bones do the work. So it's not, they're like, well, sitting up straight is hard. I'm like, yeah, so don't do it. Get your spine to sit you tall. That's what it does. It shouldn't be difficult. And they're like, oh, wow. I said, yeah, see what you're doing right now? That's perfect posture. And they, it's not hard when you let the bones do the work. They're like, but I'm not like this. I'm like, no, you shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah, no, people have this distorted view of like this just super strict kind of stiff posture, which is actually could actually be a bad thing if it's, because it goes too much in the opposite direction,
It does. Have you ever noticed that when you talk to people and you mention the word posture, everybody goes,
There's a tendency. So bad. I'm not going to lie, I thought about it.
It's instant guilt, I know I'm slouching.
Right.
It's funny.
It's like you hear your, like your inner dad or something like, you set straight,
So true.
Yeah. Well, that's so funny. Yeah, no, that's definitely something important. But yeah, doing that meditation thing with people, like just that body scan, it's really helped kind of identify particular blocks, that how their body was blocking certain progress in their technique. That I have guitar players because I teach like rock, metal guitar, and I teach all kinds of guitar, but especially those students, they're trying to like go as fast as possible. And
and what you mean?
Yeah, and then when I started my first band, I ended up in a thrash metal band, right? Like speed metal, right? And instead of moving from like, like relaxed tension, if you would, right? And just getting like these little muscles to move fast and just spreading everything out as far as tension is concerned, where I can sustain something like fast for a longer period of time. I used to just lock my arm and it was like, just it was just so unsustainable. I was on stage trying to play this music, which is really pushing me, and then I would just get this crazy pain in my elbow, and it was and I
Yeah.
realized I'm just like creating this tension unnecessarily. And what I realized is that if a person wants to advance and play faster, they actually need to relax more. That tension, the speed comes from relaxation, not from tension.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm curious, after we talked about that, did you shift it to a certain part or did you just have like an overall relaxation?
Well, it was what I described before, starting to be mindful of the different parts of the body, and they're part of part of the problem, like where I'm putting the tension here or just leaning on a certain part here. I was really going faster than I was comfortable with, and I was compensating with like, just putting it all into the elbow and just, having this vice grip, and I relaxed that. And it took some time to get used to it, but then it came from the wrist, and it's just a lot more of a fluid kind of motion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting. Recently I had the chance to chat with some of the best guitar players on the planet. As a matter of fact, one of my episodes here was with Rusty Cooley, which is one of the fastest guitar players on the planet. And we discussed this technique that he had arrived at, to get his arm to really move that fast. And it was interesting because it was like a very controlled tension around the elbow, right?
Yeah.
And it was something that I thought to avoid because of that earlier experience I described, but it was just in the right amount where it just kind of worked, and then you just sort of find that sweet spot. But there's a lot of mindfulness of the body
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
not to build up chronic tension.
Very cool. Very cool. So, do you find that guitarists have a lot of elbow issues?
Yes.
Yeah.
Elbow, if I'm sitting down and I'm playing rock guitar, I have my front delts are firing a lot, because
Yeah.
of this kind of, especially acoustic guitar players, because their arm tends to be sort of hunched over the guitar. It
Yeah.
really puts a lot of tension on the front of the shoulder. And then also tricep, bicep, definitely bicep. Because they're doing this, they're picking in, and they're in this kind of contracted bicep motion.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
Do you
so
find that more on one side than the other? Do you
definitely
find it
all
more on the
right. Yeah, that's all on the right.
opposite?
Right. So it can create a real imbalance.
Yeah.
As far as the left hand is concerned, there could be some wrist issues, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
mobility is not taken care of. And because a lot of guitar players, especially today, a lot of rock guitar players, metal guitar players are like moving on to more and more strings.
Oh, yeah?
And so what's happening is that their wrist is bending over more, and
Ooh.
they're bending their wrist further in order to get this, and they're trying to get all these technical things, so they're doing these stretches like this, right? And
Yeah.
that can really build a lot of tension, and so
Yeah.
approaching players like that, with what I was discussing before, just like listen to your body, put yourself in that position, and like, go from a relaxed position, and just while listening to the body, get into that, try to play that exercise and see what you get out of that. The other thing is I do this light touch thing.
Yeah.
So with the guitar, you have to hold the strings down with your left hand if you're a right-handed guitar player, and and then play with the right hand. And a lot of times, especially beginners or intermediate players, they hold the strings down too hard, or their guitars are set up inefficiently where the strings are way too high, and so it takes a lot of tension with the left hand to actually hold them down.
Oh, okay.
And so that can create tension in the hand, like unnecessary tension, and it could
Yeah.
slow them down as well, right? And so
Yeah.
one thing I have them do, I'm like, how do you play with the least amount of effort as possible while having the most control of your dynamics and your technique? So I have them put their fingers on the guitar and play a string, and they're not holding the string down to the fretboard. They're just literally
Mhm.
just playing it, and
Touching
then
it.
just touching it, and then gradually depress the string until it hits the fret, and then once it'll start to buzz because it's like buzzing against the fret. But then once they have just enough tension to where it stops buzzing, I tell them, good, stop right there, right? And then they
Yeah.
realize, yeah, it's like, okay, you don't need to play with any more tension than that right there.
That's brilliant.
Also holding the guitar pick, holding the pick too hard, sending all that tension up the arm, right? Like
Yeah.
hold it like it's just about to fall out of your hand, right? I got that from a friend of mine who was taking some drum instruction, and the drum teacher would actually the drum teacher would actually praise them for dropping the sticks sometimes.
Because they were playing with less tension.
Exactly, because they're relaxed enough.
Good. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. That's kind of like I've got a technique where a lot of flute players, their fingers go way too high, which creates a lot of tension.
Right.
They do this,
Yeah,
right?
too much motion. That's another thing. How small motions on the neck, just
Yeah, the slower, the faster you go, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
same there. So I
efficiency.
have them play a scale where they only touch the keys, but their fingers have to touch all the keys at all the time, but they can't press them down unless it's that note.
Right.
You would not believe the freak out on the face. Like, what?
Right.
But it solidifies that. Now let your fingers hover. Just bring them up a little bit. Let them hover. Barely move. See how fast you go. And they just, lots less tension. Because if your fingers are flying, you're generally gripping in the same area.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing with less tension.
Yeah.
That's so cool to know that.
Yeah, that same Rusty Cooley, he also had he's talking about picking really fast, and he can pick like faster than most people. And so he was talking about, like, in an ideal world, the pick depth into the string is literally it's the actual depth of the string itself, which is like just a fraction, like like a millimeter, right?
Yeah.
And if the pick can go not any deeper than that, and then as far as its radius of like how far it's going from one side of the string to the other side of the string, if you were a pure machine, if you can literally like go from one side of the string just to the other side of the string without any air in between, like that would be the most ideal circumstance, right? And so he uses a sharp pick in order to achieve that. I use a pretty sharp one myself. And so that's the idea. That's how to get the most efficiency. And because the guitar players are always trying to play faster, so
Oh, yeah, of course. Flute players are the same bunch.
yeah
They always want to play the fastest thing that they can. Or they fall into two camps. They either want to play as much and as fast as possible on all the notes, or they don't want to blow at all and they're afraid to make sound. Which drives me nuts. You're a wind instrument. You got to use air. They don't want to play. You sit on the front row. You can't be shy. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny. It's one of the two. There's no middle ground.
Another thing Rusty mentioned is actually singing through a straw, through a cocktail straw. In order to create like the voices, to stabilize the voices. I forgot how he broke that down, but the idea is like to really, it forces you to use the right support, right? And it really limits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who specializes in that. She's a vocal coach.
Okay.
And she was one of my first clients when I moved up here, and then she moved on to different types of strength training. So now she's all into that too, but she's big on the whole straw technique. Yeah. I've heard really great things about it, but I don't understand it. So what we've learned today is that playing with less tension is the way to go.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. I know. You got to stay relaxed. You got to stay relaxed. But here's the thing, people. I'll play devil's advocate, right? It's like, oh, but you want to be able to like dig in and have a like dynamic range, really. And if you're like, playing with this little tension, you can lack that. But the reality is, like, if you can create that little tension, as little tension as possible, then when you want to dig in, you have such a range that you can
Yes.
access, and you're relaxed, and so you can really kind of whip out a louder note or whatever the part calls for, but like you're efficient. you know
Mhm. Absolutely.
we could learn a lot from animals. My cat, for example, right? My
They don't
cat.
have any attention ever anywhere.
Well, you know what? My cat is really good at, and cats in general are really good at not holding extra tension. And I mean this not only physically, but also mentally. They don't hold grudges. People hold grudges, right? Like
Yeah.
whenever I step on my cat's like tail by accident or something like that, he'll freak out for a moment. But literally in a few seconds, his body will completely go back to relaxed,
Yeah.
and he won't be holding any extra tension or a grudge or anything like that. But we tend to hold like stress, in all of its forms, for way longer than we should. Whereas it should be a fight or flight kind of thing for a moment, and then we go back to our fully relaxed kind of state.
Yeah. They're very good at living in the moment.
They are.
That their whole existence is in this moment right now. They don't think about the future. The past is whatever. They are right now. Is it
Yeah.
nap, food, play, done? That's it.
Yeah, I've said it before that my cat is like one of my first and best meditation teachers, and just teaching me how to just be present, and just like I look at him and it's like he's not anywhere else.
Yeah, he's completely present
Yeah,
all the time.
all the
That's very
time,
true.
all the time. You know,
That's very true.
yeah. So on the mental side of things, you do a lot of things that all that you do is also requires a lot of mental fortitude and focus. So how do you go about that? Like, do you have like practices or in place? Like, oh, obviously the military had you like that probably had a big effect on you and your discipline and stuff.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's I can go a lot of directions with this. There's definitely crossover in the whole discipline realm
Hmm.
between musicians, the army, and the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has to do not just having the discipline to do the entire workout and not wimp out or give up or make excuses, but to just plow ahead and do, as long as you're not hurt, but you do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then having that consistency, because as we know, consistency is what makes the difference.
Right.
If you go to the gym once a week or you practice once a week, you're going to get those kind of results. You make it a daily habit, you make it a weekly habit, you make it a habit,
Mm-hmm.
and it just becomes what you do. And then you follow through that entire practice session. You
Mm.
follow through on whatever that mission is. You see it to completion. You follow through on that entire workout. You start to reap those those rewards. And then, yeah, the military definitely had a big effect on that. So I remember when the plane landed in St. Louis, I went to Fort Leonard Wood for basic training. I remember thinking, okay, my life as a civilian is over. Here we go. It's going to suck. But I can sit here and dread this, or I can look forward to it. I have two options.
Mm.
It's going to suck one way or the other, but I bet there's going to be some cool stuff that how many people get to do what I'm about to go do. Not everybody gets to do this. And some of it's going to suck, but it's all going to be short term. I mean, and yeah, some of it really sucked. It was not all fun. But then there was some really cool stuff that I got to do. And at the very end of it, they gave us this survey and they wanted to know our experience. We call it now an after action review, an AAR.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an AAR for boot camp. And they said, what did you mostly get out of it? I put a page of notes, but I said, you know what, the big thing that I got out of here, I mean, I was self-confident going in, but my confidence just skyrocketed. I was like, I can haul somebody out of a bad situation. I can take care of myself. But the biggest thing I got out of it was knowing that I am capable of doing way more than I thought I was capable of doing.
Right.
It was huge, it was like hugely eye-opening. So
Mm.
that changed my perspective on business, my perspective on my career, my perspective on life. It was so eye-opening. Like when you are forced to do way more push-ups than you think you want to do, you don't want to do it, but you better do them. And suddenly, and you can still do more. You
Mm-hmm.
hurt, but you can do more. Or you are being forced to drag yourself through the mud or through you're cold, you're sleep deprived, you're hungry, you're whatever, and you can still plow on. And then you get to the end, and you're like, that wasn't that bad.
That's powerful.
It
Wow.
was so powerful. I mean, it really changed how I thought about a lot of things. So when stuff gets hard, it's like, no, you are capable of so much more.
Yeah.
And that's physically and mentally
Mm-hmm.
than you think, And that has rung true since then.
Yeah.
That was a huge one.
I think that's, the fundamental tenet of, building character. You really, you really get to know you're capable of so much more. You get to understand human potential through your own life.
Hmm.
And just see it's like not just something, oh, you see somebody else do something impressive, you're like, oh, well, that's them, and that's, I can't really, match that. But when you see yourself do these things, and you live through it, yeah, like you said, like it'll help you in every aspect of life, you know.
Yeah.
It's
You're very quick to be able to find your own shortcomings after that and not make excuses because you're like, no, 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 I did this.
right.
No, and you're very quick to be able to see what is actually a reason in some people and what's an excuse. And your
Mm.
tolerance for it becomes really low.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's yourself or somebody else. But it's a foundational character building trait.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing you mentioned. Like for somebody who has put in the work, built a character, and then basically, quite frankly, expanded what was possible or what is possible, for them. And then they see someone who is vastly underusing their potential, and they get impatient with them because it's like, oh gosh, you're capable of so much more, but they don't see it in themselves. Well, how do you get someone to believe in themselves more?
Isn't that a good question? I mean, I had a teacher who would say, you know what, I can't motivate you. You're not your job. Let me back up. When I was a graduate student,
Mm-hmm.
she'd say, your job is not to motivate your students.
Mm.
You're not here to motivate them. They are here. It is their job. However, you can encourage, you can do all these different things. Your job isn't to motivate them. At the same time, how do you help someone see their potential? I mean, it's a great question. It's like, you can be as encouraging as possible, but I think also not enabling people is a
Mm.
very difficult thing to do. But like you have that friend who's always willing to tell it to you straight.
Uh-huh.
Much as you hate what they have to say, you
Yeah.
kind of respect it eventually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, being able to do that with people, like I'll do that with my students,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in a different authority position with them, so I feel I can say a lot more. But when I'm sometimes with my clients, so I mean, I'll be pretty upfront with them, especially if I don't have a whole lot of weight loss clients. That's not my real goal. But I have one I'm thinking in particular. But it's like, you know what? Let's just be straight about this. This does not burn as many calories as you think. This is not going to get you this. This is not. Let's be real about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting in the work, but I'm not with you 23 other hours of the day.
Yeah.
Let's talk about all of this. And I see where you can be. And let's
Mm.
find your why. Everybody's got to have their own why. And it cannot be, I just want to look better. No, it's not. Why do you want to look better? Well, I feel better in it. Well, why do you want to feel better? Well, what does that have to do with? Oh, and then we get into, well, what are you hiding from? What are you not wanting to confront? And then it's
Mm.
just, you have to find that really deep why. And the minute somebody latches onto it, there's no stopping them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fundamental. You need to find, people need a reason for what they're doing. They need to, they can get motivated by something vain only for so long. They need some deeper purpose behind what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. When it comes to working on themselves, so in the space that we're in, where we want to help musicians with their health, a lot of musicians are, they sacrifice themselves for what they're
So,
doing, and that they don't love themselves on the level, that they should, that would reflect in what they do. And so they have to sort of figure out a way to tie it all back, to tie it into like, okay, like what am I trying to create, right? And what am I putting out into the world, right? And if I'm a miserable kind of person on some level, that energy can, that energy will carry through what I'm doing, right? And
100%.
yeah, it's important to take care of yourself. Getting people to accept that is the whole
Yeah.
thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I like to say is that you are your first instrument.
Mm.
It's very easy to take ourselves for granted and to just be like, no, I do this. Well, you work well until you don't. And you don't want to wait until you are broken and then your career suffers. And now you don't have time to go to the doctor because you're on tour. Well, okay. What if you just started your tour? What if you've got months ahead of you and you're in pain and that's only going to get worse? It's too late. You don't wait to change the oil in the car when the car breaks down.
Right.
You have to have maintenance, right?
Right.
And you can think about it in terms of that, or kind of like strength training for musicians is kind of like insurance,
Yes.
which insurance can be hard to sell unless you think about a car accident. That's why we know we need car insurance.
Right.
Some people don't want health insurance. But it's like, what if you're the one with a brain tumor? Like last year, I had to have my gallbladder taken out of nowhere. Oh, it needed to come out. What if I didn't have health insurance? I'd still be like in mountains of debt. I wouldn't be able to play. I wouldn't be able to train. I wouldn't be able to work. All those things. So we know there's some things we identify with as needing insurance, but we take ourselves for granted that we don't need insurance for ourselves. Or what I hear a lot is that personal training is a luxury, or that musicians are broke. Bull.
Yeah. Yeah. Very limiting belief.
Yeah. How much are your headsets? How much is your guitar? How much is your studio? I mean, we're like, okay, well, I don't have great clothes and my car's a jalopy and whatever. Yeah, but you spend money on the things that are important to you.
Yeah.
And if your body's not important, you don't spend money on it. And if you cheapen yourself out and you go find the cheapest trainer, you're going to get what you pay for. I had a client, a friend who might be a client at some point, talked to me yesterday, and she's been dealing with all kinds of shoulder issues and neck issues, and she's got injuries out the wazoo. She's a flute player, and she said that she went to her local gym and signed up, and the trainers there made her worse. And she's like, I don't think they know what they're doing, and I don't think they know how to train somebody with injuries. And then they put me in a group, and I was like, no, you need somebody right there with you, just like you need a teacher when you're learning how to play.
Of course.
Olympic athletes need coaches.
Right.
What makes you any different?
Mm-hmm.
I need a coach. I would love to have my own trainer. I haven't found anybody I want to train me yet.
Yeah.
But I will stick to it so much better with someone else. And it's like, when you make that investment in yourself, my gosh, talk to any musician who really has made that consistent commitment. And that's another thing musicians say, my schedule's crazy. I don't have that time. I can't make the commitment. It's like, yeah, you can. You can find it. I mean, you're not going to be doing a session at 7 a.m, are you? Okay. Are you going to do a session at 7 and one at midnight? No. Okay. So where can you make time to make something happen for you? Whether it's not working out with a trainer, fine. But can you do something for yourself every day? You make that time for yourself. You make time to practice. You make time for the session. You make time for all these things. So it goes back to not making those excuses, because at some point you're going to break. And then you don't have time for excuses, and then your job's on the line. And then if you don't work, you don't make money.
Yeah, yeah. I say the same thing about eating food, like good food, right? And I do buy the organic and all that, and it's just like, oh, someone's like, oh, I don't have money to buy organic. I can't afford to buy cheap food, because of the problems that I'll deal with later, because I'll pay more in health bills later than, you know what I'm saying? So I'd rather pay it up front.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the same thing, I mean, so it's when we lump all musicians together and say, well, I don't have time. I'm broke. I don't need this. Well, that's too expensive. No. Put your life in perspective. What is most important to you? And then that's where you put your money, your time, and your attention.
Right.
And if your body isn't it, well, it's going to work until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be in the middle of something like your dream job and then you don't work.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, and this is common, just with people in general. Even outside of music, just in general, people like don't prioritize their health enough, and then
Yeah.
they prioritize in this Western world getting successful and whatnot, and then if you get there with the absence of your health, what good is it anyway? You're gonna be sick all the time. You can't even enjoy what you created for yourself. So I feel like there should always be at least a baseline of self care, and as self education and awareness, like you said, of the body, and of all facets of health, mental, physical, because that's your machine. I mean, that's the machine that's driving you through life. You
Yeah. Like one
yeah.
of my friends slash clients he's a bass player, and he's this huge dude. He's broken his back like twice,
Wow.
so he understands some things. But he said, you know what, I like what you do. This is what musicians don't understand. It's not just about feeling better in general physically. When I leave here, my clarity of thought and my creativity is through the roof, and that's huge. And besides that, I know I'm not going to throw out my back pushing an amp up Second Avenue or loading my kit in the van or whatever. I'm the one who has to do all that. And if I can't do that, I can't do my job. But my clarity of thought, I am so much clearer and more focused when I get out of here. And then
Oh
I have
yeah.
more. Yeah. He's
Oh
like, I
yeah.
wish more musicians would understand that's what exercise does for you.
Oh yeah, I mean, like like in my rock world, like when I toured, we're carrying equipment like every day. We're on shitty sleep schedules, finding hard to get some good food, eating gas stations sometimes,
Yeah.
like yeah. So it's tough, right? And so I did whatever I can do to make sure that my band and I are at the top of our health. Like I traveled with a green powder, right? And I forced everyone to drink it every single day. I had a blender, like a bullet blender that I would pull out
Yes.
in a rest stop, and I would just like and I
We're
whip
drinking
up.
this.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it, and everyone was on board, and we mitigated getting sick for a good number of weeks before, because it's inevitable, lack of sleep
It
and all this
is.
stuff, but but we stayed healthy most of the time. But also to realize that, like, if you're carrying this equipment, you need to understand, like you were saying, form. It's like you can't be carrying like 100-pound amp and do that with shitty form.
You're going to
hurt
trash
your,
back,
yeah, you're gonna trash your back,
hurt
and
your
then
knees.
or your knees, yeah, and then you won't be able to do the thing that you love to do.
Yeah.
So and I love doing this because there's like, I'll have people who've been through that and came out the other end learning about it, with some irreparable damage, but
Yeah.
with wisdom, who could share it. And then, young people who could like listen to the show, young artists, and not make those same mistakes or make less of them, at least,
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if you know this. There's not a lot of studies done on musicians and strength training and injuries and those rates. No, I mean, compared to the amount of research in the world on all kinds of physical stuff, musicians are just a very vastly understudied lot.
Right.
But the one of the very last, one of the most recent ones that came out, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, said up to 93% of musicians are injured as a direct result of playing an instrument.
Wow.
93%.
I mean, yeah, it's chronic motion.
Everybody.
Yeah. I think anything you do chronically, you really have
Yes,
to, you know, you have to do things to
exactly.
mitigate injury. Yeah.
Right, right. So, like you said, like you made things happen. You made a commitment to, like, this is how we can stay healthy on the road. We're gonna do this. I'm gonna bring a blender. Like, right on. Go for it.
Yeah.
You
And
can find a way to make it happen.
exactly. And there've been some great examples of people, like one of the things I talk about is like health on tour. Right. And, like I asked nutrition questions like, okay, well, what are you eating before you go out on stage, to get most optimal results, like in the moment, but also, things that are sustainable.
Yeah.
And just, little tips and tricks, like, again, Rusty mentioned he always has cans of fish with him, so like, it's just very, very good.
Yeah.
It's practical financially, it's practical, just nutritionally and everything. But like I travel with bands, resistance bands, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's just such an easy thing to have with you,
they are. They are.
and you could just stick them into a door somewhere at a hotel, and you can do a workout, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, a workout does not have to be this massively intensive thing, swinging 400 pounds and doing, barbells and stuff. That's great, but there is value to be had in calisthenics,
Yeah.
in body training. I went to basic training. We didn't have any weights for 9 weeks.
Mm,
I mean, it was besides our rifle and maybe our Kevlar. That was it.
mm,
It was all push-ups and squats and lunges and running and sit-ups and doing all kinds of body weight stuff for 9 weeks.
wow.
You know, there is value in that. There's
Oh yeah.
value in resistance bands. There's value in a TRX or a suspension trainer,
Hmm.
and you can get knockoff versions of those for nothing. You
Yeah.
know, and they pack up so small.
Yeah, yeah. So not having a gym to go to is definitely not an excuse.
No.
And but to mention, like I did have a guy on the show, Matt Dillon Diana, who's who's into bodybuilding, and he managed to maintain an awesome physique while touring. And how did he do it? He made sure that every so often they had a kitchen, access to a kitchen. He would meal prep for the next few days
Yeah.
in that kitchen, and he would make sure that they're close by to a gym, and he had like a like LA Fitness or a gym that's everywhere, a membership,
Yeah.
and
It's doable.
yeah.
It's doable. I have a friend who's been on tour. He's with the Mummies and Kelly Clarkson
Hmm.
and someone else. I can't remember her name right now. But I was asking him, like, what are the biggest struggles? He said, besides sleep, lack of consistency in the touring schedule, because you never know how long you're going to be on the road, if it's going to be an early show, late show, when you're going to leave, and then not getting sleep. But he's like, but I don't let that be an excuse. People are like, there's no time to exercise. Oh yeah, there is. What he was saying is like, they'll get on the bus and they'll drive all night. They'll show up at the place. They won't have sound check until, I don't know, 5. He's got the entire day. So he always has a basketball with him and his shoes so he can go run, or he can rent a bike. He's always trying to find a gym. And so, like, you can make that, ask the tour manager, hey, can we park it close to a gym or find a way to, you can Uber to a gym. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And he doesn't make it an excuse. And so when he gets home, he said, now that's the other thing. When he gets home, suddenly you're not on that touring schedule and you have to make up a schedule. And that's hard. So he makes a commitment to get up at 5 and go play basketball with some people before he does anything.
Wow.
Just so he can keep that going. Plus, now he's got accountability. People are waiting at the basketball court at 6 a.m. So he goes no matter what. And that keeps him in that consistent schedule.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he there's no way. He'd be a mess.
Routines are so important.
They are. They're so important. Because how can you get your consistency when your schedule's all over? You have to do what you can to create something.
Right. Now, if someone is really taking that kind of, taking those strides to really make sure they get their fitness in and nutrition and whatever it is, they have the fundamental understanding of its importance, right? And that they've prioritized it to where it's like, this must get done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to come to that point, you really have to take things into the long-term perspective, and also realize that it's not just something you're doing for the future. You feel better in the present, and you could put on a better show.
Absolutely.
You can actually enjoy your time out instead of being miserable. Yeah.
Yeah. Travel is so much more fun when you're healthy.
In fact, there's a great example of a band. Consider the Source. I'll actually see them next week on my birthday.
Hey, happy birthday!
Thank you. And so, but Consider the Source. They're when they tour, and they tour a lot. They do something called health touring. And so the way it works with their health touring is that they build in time into their tour schedule to hike and to actually take advantage of the travel and to really, yes. And I mean, this is something like when you hear like artists who are just traveling the whole world and they don't get to see anything and they just, like stay in their hotel rooms and watch Netflix when they're free. It's like, what are you doing?
Why would you do that?
Yeah. right? Utilize
Yeah,
that opportunity.
yeah, absolutely. There's so many things that you can see and do, and you take advantage of it.
Of course. You really have to use that. Hmm. And they also, it's funny because I'm not a proponent for this kind of diet, but like these guys are also vegan, and they manage to make that work as well somehow, which is not a very easy thing to do when you're out on the road. You know?
No, not. Wow. I admire that dedication. It's not my type of diet either, but I admire that. I mean, that takes commitment. It
Yeah,
really does.
it takes a
Very
lot of
cool.
commitment. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm it's having the right mindset. That's what it comes down to, because you need to understand the role of this stuff, and how it really will keep your career going for a long period of time.
Hmm.
So on another front, totally untouched by to this point in this conversation, is relationships, right? Relationships with other people, with other musicians and such, right? Because all this health stuff, it ties in, like that band I was talking about. There's an understanding among these few musicians. It's like, we got to take care of ourselves. And so having that support from the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important to have to have good relationships with people. I mean, yeah. I mean, having somebody to hold you accountable, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing, but having somebody waiting on you and noticing what you're doing, who understands your reasoning, and they share that reasoning. There's It's so much easier to do things with other people. It's way harder completely on your own.
Yeah.
It's very easy to fall off the wagon and just be like, well, nobody knew anyway, whatever.
Right.
If you got a whole group of people and you were doing this together and they're like, hey, let's go, and I'm tired. No, you're not. Let's go.
Oh yeah. No,
They're
that's an
just,
amazing thing. It's really, really empowering, because like we all get weak at times, and,
oh, for
and
sure.
to have people that are just like, all right, like that are going to push you, and that are, not going to put up with your shit. They're going to make sure
Yes.
that you do what you set out to do, you
Yeah.
know, even on the
Yeah.
days that you don't want to, you know, character, right?
Exactly. It all comes back down to character and integrity.
Yeah, but even without them though, on that character integrity, like if I'm out, if I go to the gym on the regularity that I go to the gym, whatever I have set for that moment in my training cycle or whatever, if I don't feel like it, I'm still there. I still go there, still hit the sauna, still hit the cold plunge, just like
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You still follow through because
yeah.
the benefits are going to outweigh whatever you're not feeling. There, I mean, as long as you're not getting into I don't think most people deal with this, but there's some people who just get into overtraining, and
Oh
then they
yeah.
get into burnout, and they go too hard, too long, too far, and then their sleep suffers and their joints start hurting, and then it's just like, no, 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 no. Rest is part of that, but that doesn't need to be all the time,
Right.
because it's easy to get back to that. So that's especially prone to people who have an all or nothing mindset.
Right.
Yeah, which is also not healthy. So having people who can join you on your journey is really it's a really good thing.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
for
whether
sure.
it's your family or your friends or your men's group or whoever they are, just like you just know that you're going to see this dude at the gym every day, and it's just kind of expected. Everybody's got those people they see all the time, and then at some point they're like, "Hey, I missed you. I didn't see you the other day." You might not even know their name. I had somebody tell me a story like that the other day. They felt bad because this guy they see at the gym every day asked where they were. They don't even know their name, but hey, the guy who always wears a sweatband, whatever. We're asking. So
Yeah.
people notice when you're a regular. They notice. So you never know who's being impacted by the workout they see you doing, and when you're not there, they notice.
Yeah. People form communities, right?
Hmm.
And so when you go to a gym, especially something that's like say CrossFit, that's just known for their like
Community.
super community, right? And it's
Oh,
so
yeah.
powerful. It's so
Hmm.
powerful,
I
and
do
you become
that.
the average of the people you hang out with. And so if you
Very
hang out with a
true.
bunch of like lazy, unhealthy friends, or fellow musicians, whatever it may be, right? You just kind of drift into that, the diner going friends, or the or the gym going friends.
Yeah, you do. Yep. It's so much easier to keep up habits if that's what your friends around you are doing. Absolutely.
Right. So, I had the circumstance at one point of trying to, kind of spend more time doing things for my health, but I had like directly opposing influences, and so I had to start making more friends that were in that world and were interested in that way.
Yeah.
And that gradually kind of pulled me toward that. Now, notice I didn't say like get rid of those friends, because then you create a vacuum,
Yes. And then that is subject to be filled with worse things.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
That's how
important to crowd out the bad with the good.
Yeah, exactly. Something that you didn't mention is that if you're a family person, having your family on board with you. I've had a lot of clients who struggle, like they are with it, and if they didn't have a family, they would be so much farther along, because their family's actually holding them back because they're not on board with their health.
Yeah.
Or their kids have special issues that make it harder for them to eat certain ways or whatever. And I mean, there's some significant challenges when you have a family that is just not really into helping you out with it. I mean, they say they support you, but they're not really helping along. And I said, well, you can meal prep, and he doesn't mind meal prepping, but then you've got to make meals for his wife, then meals for him, meals for the kids, and it gets to be this whole big thing. Have you come into any kind of situations where you've seen that and then things have gotten turned around?
Yeah. There needs to be a really clear purpose, and the best circumstances where the partner of the person gets right on board with them because they create a strong enough case. Like, quite frankly, it's like, listen, if we get healthier and we turn this around, yeah, sure, we'll sort of eat foods that we're kind of a little uncomfortable with at first, but our sex will improve, right? And and
yeah,
you got to sell it right. You got to sell it.
You have to sell it.
You got to sell it right. And that's what it comes down to. It's just like, I mean, that's basic human motivation, right? You just got to figure out, like, what does this person really care about, and how do we kind of get at the core of that?
I like your thinking. It's so true. It's so true. You get down to that basic, what's your why? I mean,
yeah.
You can sell it. That's true. You tell musicians they'll make more money, and you tell your spouse their sex will be better. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, this all snowballs into the positive, basically, right? And musicians often do have that sort of limiting mindset, and part of the whole half of what this show is about. We've been talking about health this whole time, but entrepreneurship is fundamental to musicianship, right? To successful musicianship.
Yes.
Because musicians are, from a psychological point of view, have the same temperament as an entrepreneur. They're not a employee type, if you would, right?
No.
Right. And they try to stick their square peg selves into a round hole, and they're just miserable, and they don't deal well with the authority and everything, right? It's just not working. And it's because they grew up with that, as seeing that as normal, because maybe their parents taught them that way, or they seen that in society around them. But they're different, right? And I've been pointing out, like, how much opportunity there is today, social media and all these little startups and ways of earning money that are just flexible and then, of course, entrepreneurial, and just kind of encouraging people to take that route. But it's something very special. See, if you take somebody who has a normal 9-to-5 job, they have a boss that basically controls everything that they do. They tell them, okay, do this, 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 and this, and they don't have to think for themselves. They just kind of do this rote task over and over, and then when they need to do something else, their boss tells them the next thing to do. They're not, but as a musician, they tell themselves if they're, independent in that regard.
Mhm.
And they drive their own, for the direction of their own work.
Yeah.
In that same way, they can take their finances or the direction of their own businesses, or, forming a business, into their own hands.
Hmm.
So, and like one thing, you just kind of analyze yourself, because people don't really, they think lowly of themselves oftentimes, or they're like, they're not aware of what they're capable of.
Yeah.
So if they come to know themselves a little better, or like kind of inquire within, like, what are my real interests in, and how can I give value to the world, right? How can I
Right.
provide value?
Yeah. I have seen. There's another a friend of mine who's doing a podcast, and it's all about being, what's she call it, flutepreneur, I think.
Mm,
So how to, and it's all about basically being an entrepreneur as a flute player, because there's a bajillion flute players in the world. There are not a lot of classical music jobs. How do you make a career for yourself and don't feel like you're selling out
mm,
on your love? And that's a big thing. It's like, well, I designed Music Strong to be to fuse my love of fitness with my love of music and
mm-hmm.
meet a need in a niche that hasn't been met.
Right.
But I still struggle sometimes with, I'm really not playing as much as I would like to be. But at the same time, it's like this, I'm not selling out. I still get to play. I'm still in an orchestra. I'm still in the army band. I still will make those opportunities to play, and I pursue those. But at the same time, this is a passion of mine that I've got to focus on. And I see a lot of musicians, they feel like they do all this work to get these degrees, and then they take a job doing nothing of like it, and they feel like they've sold out. And it's, no, you can create a life for yourself that is not what academia said you had to do.
Right.
Academia can be such a narrow mind. You have to get an orchestra job, or you have to teach.
Mm,
That is so 1950s. That's not even an option for most people anymore.
right.
It's really not. What about studio gigs? What about making your own ensemble? What about touring? What about creating, like, I created a job, you created a job.
Mm-hmm.
I have another friend who does nothing but marketing for musicians.
Mm.
And you take all that, your experience as a musician makes you uniquely qualified to cater to musicians.
Yeah.
Use that, and you can still play.
Yeah. I think Tony Robbins really had me make this deep inquiry, into myself, and I came to a similar conclusion as you did. I became impassioned with like health and fitness and all of that, and music, and I was like, well, how do I combine these two to make something that's uniquely me? And the way that manifests will be different for every person. So you have your Music Strong thing, I have this podcast, and so it's just and it'll add value in a unique way, and you'll feel the meaning of it, and it won't feel like selling out, like you said. It'll feel like, wow, I'm doing the thing that incorporates all parts of me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You're making a difference. You're doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
And you still have options.
That musician that I talked about, who has the fitness, he's a bodybuilder, right? He does meal prep for musicians for tours.
Oh, that's brilliant. I need to call him. That's fabulous.
Isn't it?
So smart.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, exactly.
If he doesn't get it, who does? Man.
The great thing is, and this is this is a fundamental marketing law. There's a 21 immutable laws of marketing. It's a great book. And one of the fundamental laws is, be the first in your category if you can. Right. And so if you, and that's not that difficult to do. You just have to think about it from a fresh perspective of like, okay, what am I and what are my constituent parts and how do I uniquely combine those? And then you start to have all these novel ideas like those. And like, and you can serve the community and really add value in the way that's going to be, really connected to who you are. And so you're going to feel like impassioned, and if you're doing something with that kind of like passion and purpose, you're just going to do it better than everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend who's another musician friend, and he's a touring musician. He was in a huge band, still is, but he also does all this business stuff on the side. He's got his own company where he helps musicians with their marketing and all kinds of other business stuff. And he and I sat down for coffee one day, and he's like, "I love what you do, and I like, let's talk about it." And I'm throwing all these ideas at him because I have ideas constantly, and I have a habit of just jumping on them immediately. And if they don't work out, they don't work out. But you never know what's going to be like hit and be like what somebody needs and catch on. And he said, when you're trying to come up with your best angle, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to take somebody's idea for the wheel and make it yours. People copy all the time.
Yeah.
You're not stealing. If you're taking the same idea, just change something small to make it different.
Yeah.
And it's still a unique product.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely right. So it's like, there's 100 different ways to do the same thing. I mean, that's why we have things like Snuggies and shake weights.
Right.
I mean, they took a blanket, somebody heated it, somebody put a hood on it. And
Right.
I mean, there's all kinds of avenues that you can pursue, and you don't have to feel like you have to create something entirely different.
Yeah.
So it's still valuable.
It is. It is. I mean, that's the value that a human being can have, and like I said, musicians are, the same temperament as entrepreneurs. We just have to act on these ideas.
Yes.
And believe that we can, and just go into it. Like I have this idea, and one of the goals I have is to do like seminars, workshops of like musicians' health, and so
Yes.
and to have like people like you over there as as instructors, and as part of like the program, and kind of like do a weekend or a week-long boot camp kind of thing, where they learn all the habits and instill them into their routines, and so they can move on with that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. We need that in the musician world, That's something that should come to. It's funny you're talking about that. A friend of mine is another flute player and a massage therapist, and she and I have been thinking over the last couple of years, how can we make a musician's wellness retreat?
Yeah.
And do that same thing. Like, how do we want to structure it? If it's just the two of us, how do we make this happen?
Yeah.
And we can always do it one way and then see what worked and what didn't and branch out.
Right.
And then get bigger or longer or whatever.
Now from the perspective of the student, like what you were saying before about like, you're teaching someone like 1 hour, and then like, then you there's all this other 23 hours of the day, you don't know how they're conducting themselves. But if you have them in an intensive environment for a period of time, then you can actually like monitor them closely, or they can start to build these real habits into their routine.
Yeah. And in that we're thinking like a weekend type thing.
Yeah.
You're also making relationships with other people who care about the same things on the same level as you do, because you all spent the money to get there. You all made the time to be there, and you all have the same interests. And now you have connections with people that you didn't have.
Yeah. There's a lot of
relationship we were talking about.
It's a win-win-win on many levels, right? It's just like, the musician who's like getting in on this, and they're immersing themselves. There's complete immersion in the techniques and practices. There's immersion with other people. There's a lot of skin in the game to make sure it's like, oh shit, I put all this money in, I have to make sure I get something out of this.
Yes.
Yeah and it's a nice escape from the everyday, because sometimes it's like to change real habits, you really just have to like get yourself out of your element and just deep dive into something like this, and musicians love doing these like kind of retreats with each other and stuff, and so yeah,
you should definitely do it. I'll come visit. I want to be part of that. That sounds awesome. It needs to happen.
Oh yeah,
I haven't done anything like that yet, so there you go.
Yeah. In fact, on a smaller scale, I've been thinking about taking students on the way, like for a weekend straight, instead of just like for an hour.
Yeah.
And my reasoning behind that is like, back in the day, 200 years ago, you used to live with your teacher, and that's how, yeah, and that's how it was, and I would get like super Mr. Miyagi and have them walk up and down the stairs with dumbbells, and you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I love it. Oh, it's great. Yeah, you could develop an apprenticeship program.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of doing.
I love it.
You know, and that's great because, you know, I get so impassioned and deep on, you know, when I'm teaching students, it's like, damn, if I had them for like more time, you know, and I really had them immersively for a longer period, then we can
Yeah.
really make the needle move in a measurable way in a short period of time.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome, man.
yeah. So that's something I definitely want to do. So where do you see yourself going with this, with your music strong fitness?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I have big plans. Besides doing these musician specific books, and I think these are going to take quite a bit longer to come out because the first one I just wanted to be, you know, generic basics for everybody. These I want to be as detailed as I can be. Maybe not like the Bible on it, but I would like to cover a lot more and be
Mm,
real specific, right? So I'm going to put out all those volumes and then, you know, combine them in a giant one thing.
mm,
I have had several. I travel to teach workshops, and I've had lots of. I do them at a lot of colleges and conferences. But I've had several colleges say they wish there was a college course on this that they could teach. You
mm,
know, so I've been thinking, how can I quote unquote dumb it down? You know, so it's not quite so anatomical. Where how can I replicate this so that anybody can do it, and
mm,
anybody can teach it and still be safe? So I'm thinking like I can do that, and I'm trying to pursue this idea of being a trainer in residence at
mm.
different colleges.
Okay.
And that way I can go to different schools and be like, you know, people can send me questions. And then I can show up for a week at a time or a few days at a time and be on campus and help and do whatever, you know, with people in person.
Yeah.
And then you always have that resource,
Yeah.
you know, so that's, those are all ideas that I'm pursuing at the moment. But when it comes to music strong, I don't want to quote unquote just be a personal trainer. You know,
Right.
there's not a lot of future in just trading every hour of your life for money forever.
Right. Right. I was about to
That's
ask you on on that
oh
and,
my gosh,
about scaling. Um,
yeah,
and so the idea from a business perspective, yeah, you don't want to trade all your time for money. And
it's a,
when you do trade your time for money, you want it to really be, you know, significant, you know, like a speaker, you know, like you're out there and you're, you know, and but the books are a great idea, you know, and especially if you make them ebooks and stuff like that, you can really you can scale well in that way. You can create Udemy courses, you know.
yeah, yep.
Mhm.
So yeah, actually the book is available for immediate download. Like you can get it on my website right now. It's just the print version's being redone. But and there are actually links to videos in the ebook that are not in the book because
Mm,
it's an ebook, obviously.
sure.
But when it comes to Music Strong, my goal is to have Music Strong be like a center for musicians' wellness, not
Mm,
just personal training. I want every kind of practitioner you can think of who would love to help musicians be part of this.
mm,
And we offer everything in house from massage to acupuncture to performance therapy to counseling to chiropractic to, I don't know, red light therapy and cryotherapy and strength training and, you know, whatever you can think of that musicians might want. I would love to have a center and then be able to franchise it out. And
yeah.
then I can help as many people as I can think of, and it doesn't have to be I'm the only one doing it.
Right.
There, there's a personal trainers. This is kind of funny, but personal trainers tend to approach our field from a mentality of lack.
Mm,
That there's just not enough people out there. Nobody has enough money, and there's not enough people who have to hire us. There are millions of people who need what we do,
right.
right? And it's all a perspective of what you value. Like I said before, there is no shortage. Like I don't want to necessarily be the only person who does what I do. I
Right.
know, granted, I'm the only person with my skill set, but that doesn't mean other people can't do this and help people in this way.
Right.
And the more people that are trained in that, the more people can get helped. And then I'm not having to trade every hour of my day, but I'm
Right.
still making a huge impact. That's what
Exactly.
we want to do.
How to scale. How to scale.
Yes. Yes. So I was just talking to somebody about franchising this week, and I decided this is not the right time to do it, but I am going in that direction as fast as I can figure out how.
I hear all that. I hear all
Yeah.
that. Yeah, for sure. And then,
And I
yeah.
don't think there's
Hmm.
anything like it in the country. So
Right.
it's like now is the time to do that. And I live in Nashville, so why not here?
Yeah. Oh no, you live in the perfect town for it.
I know, I know. So I would love to find all those practitioners who love to work with musicians and be
Hmm.
like, you don't have to be my employee, but this is where you go and this is where we work and we offer your services on these days or however we make it work. But this is where musicians come to get their answers.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't have I don't have all the knowledge of a chiropractor or of a physical therapist or whatever. And so some questions I am not able to deal with.
Yeah.
And instead of my referring people out to all over the place, musicians don't have time to go from one person to another. No, you just come here. We do it all here.
Yeah. No,
That's what
that's
I want.
easier. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. And then of course training people to do what you do. You know. And so then you can multiply yourself, and that's where it's at. That's where it's at.
Yes. Yes. So there's this course I'm taking called neurokinetic therapy, and I'm using it as a model because it's using manual muscle testing to find out muscle imbalances and correct those. How you release and correct those is based on what you do. He gives the protocol. You use what you have. That's what I'm trying to figure out. How can I boil down what I do into other people don't have to have exactly the credentials I have?
Right.
Not an easy question.
No.
you know. But that was a brilliant model, and that doesn't have to have a brick and mortar at all.
Right.
So, yeah, lots
Yeah.
of fun ideas in the future.
Oh yeah. No, I'm also sort of, I have the burden of ideas, right? And so,
Yeah.
and I think, if you're a musician, I mean, that's fundamental to what we do. I mean, we're creative people, right? And so if you set your mind to something like this and you realize that, you're capable of more than just writing a few notes, or playing a few notes, you have just a sea of ideas. And then, and once you get like a good amount of entrepreneurship under your belt, then that'll be an area of competence, and it'll just snowball from there.
Yes. And then you can partner with other people who are doing what you do.
Yeah.
Just like this. It doesn't mean that because there are multiple people doing what you do that you're valued any less.
Right.
How many chiropractors are there in the world, and we still all seek out chiropractors?
Yeah.
Or, doesn't mean that you can't partner with people. Now is the time to get on that from a musician's health perspective, I think, because I feel like our field is finally, I've been doing this for 10 years. And when I started, there was nothing. I knew of nothing. There was, but it didn't have any traction. I feel like the last 2 years, there has been so much traction in this field. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it is
it's
exciting.
Fun to meet all these people who are
and what you're saying, it's a collaboration mindset rather than a competition mindset, and that's really what's going to bring us forward.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough to go around. There's more than enough to go around.
Yeah, that's important to realize and to keep in mind. That it's really, there's an abundance of of people who could utilize what we do,
Mm-hmm.
and really benefit from it. And it's not a zero sum game. It's just you really, everyone can add value in a different way. So
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about this field. If you could share one thing with all musicians, what would it be?
One thing?
One thing, one suggestion.
Narrowing this down. My first thought is like, you can do more than you're capable of, but we already talked about that.
Well, that's true, though. Yeah.
It is true, but I think it's about the one thing that I would say to musicians is that you have to put yourself first in order for your art to come first.
Mm.
You can't put yourself first and you don't take care of yourself. The saying, if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. It's true. No one's going to hear your music if you're not well. If you can't move or you've got an injury, and what if you suddenly get, the dreaded carpal tunnel or whatever? I mean, what if you can't play anymore? How about we prevent that from happening? And that starts with you making yourself a priority. It doesn't mean you have to go strength training, but you have to find something that you love to do and make it a consistent habit. And then throw in some things you suck at, because there's a reason you suck at them.
This is true.
Like, I hate pull-ups. I work on doing pull-ups.
Right.
So it's you have to have both of those things, and it doesn't have to be, I'm going to go to the gym for 7 hours a day. No, I'm going to make a commitment to do 15 minutes every day and
Right.
then build on what I love to do from there. But I have to start making myself a priority in order to get out into the world what I want to put out.
Definitely. Definitely.
That's my one
Totally on
thing.
board with that. So yeah, this has been awesome. And we'll definitely connect more and you know, when I get around to making this workshop and, you know, then you'll definitely be involved. You know,
Very cool.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
We need
thank
to
you
work
so much
together.
for. Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me on here. This has been a blast.
Yeah,
Really
no,
excited what you're
I enjoyed it plenty.
doing.
All right, ladies and
Sure.
gentlemen, Angela McCuiston, where can you be found online?
You can find me at my website. It's www.musicstrong.com, on Facebook at MusicStrong, at Instagram at MusicStrong Fitness. I think that covers about everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, then cheers and
Cheers.
keep doing what you're doing. Fight the good fight.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.